The following is for informational purposes only. For medical advice, please see a medical professional.
Welcome to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susy. Today we're covering macronutrients and specifically carbohydrates. And Susy's really going to take us away on this one because she is the food scientist, and I will ask the layperson's questions as they come up. So Susy, tell us. What do you want to tell us about
carbohydrates
and macronutrients?
One of the most important things we can do to be advocates for our health is to eat food that nourishes our body. We eat for many reasons. We eat to stave off hunger, to celebrate our culture, to nourish ourselves. I like to think about food as a primary way to advocate for our health, at the same time recognizing that we eat for pleasure as well. Sometimes we eat for emotional reasons. I think we both can speak to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell us I know that macronutrients are comprised of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And today we're talking about carbohydrates. But could you explain to the audience what's the difference between macronutrients and vitamins?
Okay.
Because today we're talking about macronutrients.
Right. Macronutrients are the ones that give your body energy. The macronutrients are comprised of protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So
that's as much as I know. Yeah.
Right. And micronutrients are the vitamins and minerals and other compounds that you need to sustain your health. You don't necessarily get energy from micronutrients. They help your body use energy. So taking a B vitamin, if you take B vitamins, they don't give you energy in themselves, but they help your body use energy. So that's an important concept.
So the food we eat are the macronutrients, and they might facilitate certain things that are found naturally in our body. We'll get into it and explain it.
Yeah.
But I know that food is made up of, some foods are 100% carbohydrate. Some foods have carbohydrate, protein, and fat. And fats might be all fat. And so there are so many different elements to it. And
most foods are a combination. I'm obviously, for instance, meat doesn't really have a lot of carbohydrate in it. It's protein and fat, and sugar is 100% carbohydrate. So, I'm talking about white sugar. So usually, the dietary guidelines that are set out, usually they want to see you eating about between 45 to 65% of your calories from carbohydrates, between 20 and 35 out of protein, and between 10 and 35% from fats. It all varies dependent upon your age and upon your health condition. And, so it should add up to 100%. Carbohydrates, though, have gotten a bad rap. And that's why I like to talk about carbohydrates, because they play a huge role in your health.
Well, yeah, I wanted to say, I understand the difference between complex and simple carbohydrates. And I don't know. I think of simple carbohydrates as sugar. And in my mind, I don't even like to call them carbohydrates, because the complex carbohydrates are so good for us. So explain to people complex versus simple before we get into
Sure. Well,
the bad rap.
Basically, there depends upon their structure. So, you think about a monosaccharide. Monosaccharides are one sugar molecule. Most disaccharides are ones consisting of two sugar molecules. Typically, cane sugar, table sugar is a disaccharide. It's glucose and fructose. And then you have polysaccharides, which are complex carbohydrates and have a more complicated structure. So it also has to do with digestion speed. Simple
Okay.
carbohydrates digest more quickly and lead to a rapid rise in your blood sugar, whereas complex carbohydrates, because they're more complex,
They have
take
fiber.
longer.
They
Yeah,
have
they have
fiber.
fiber,
Mm-hmm.
and they're more likely to have a slow release, and your body takes longer to digest them.
Mm-hmm.
So, examples, simple carbohydrates include table sugar, honey, fruit juice, candy, while complex carbohydrates include whole grains, beans, lentils, and most vegetables. Vegetables are great sources of complex carbohydrates. One of the biggest roles of a carbohydrate is to provide energy, sparing protein. So, protein can go ahead in your body and do the important jobs that it needs to do because protein does have some really important jobs in the body. And I think that carbohydrates have gotten a bad rap. It's interesting. Historically, back in the 1960s, maybe in the 50s, there were a lot of studies done about heart disease and obesity. And researchers looked at groups of people over time, and they pretty much decided that fat was the villain, and that fat was what was causing the problems with heart disease and obesity. So this started a big change in the American diet. People started eating less fat, and of course, if you're eating less of one thing, you got to eat more of something else. So, primarily, what happened is people started eating way too many carbohydrates. All those low fat foods came out, low fat crackers, low fat cookies, low fat, low fat, low fat. And, people were encouraged to not eat eggs, whereas it turns out eggs actually have a lot of very important, good nutrients in them. Well, guess what happened? Obesity and heart disease did not go away. In fact, it increased. So, it's very complicated. It's not a simple thing. Protein foods, though, are the most expensive macronutrients. And many protein foods like red meat contain fat also. So when people began lowering fat and protein, the standard diet became overloaded with carbs. And this was a big shift in our food culture. It also was about this time that people started using high fructose corn syrup. And I say people, primarily it was in the food service industry. When you think about soda pop and ketchup and sauces and fast food, and the food service industry figured out that they could get a sugar from corn and they could make it in the lab, and then it was a lot easier and a lot more compatible for processed food.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real commonly used in soda pop, but it's also used in candy, fruit drinks, salad dressing, cookies, crackers. Now, recently, in the last probably 10 years, there's been a move to not use high fructose corn syrup so much because it has been linked to some pretty serious things, like it interferes with the hormones in your brain that control appetite.
Wow.
So, a lot of times on food labels now you see no high fructose corn syrup because it even was in bread. It was pretty
Mm.
commonly used that way. So basically what was happening was it was causing oxidative stress and inflammation in your brain that interfered with your appetite control. So, I mean,
Wow.
that was a pretty
So,
big deal. I'm really glad to see that the food service industry is moving away from it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what else happens in the body when you eat too many simple carbs? Like
Well,
carbohydrates are good, the
yeah,
complex.
it can affect weight gain. Sugar
Mm-hmm.
definitely causes obesity. I hate to say it.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went to school as a nutrition student, they said, "Oh, the only thing wrong with eating sugar is it'll cause dental caries." Well,
Mm-hmm.
we know now that that's not true. It also affects your hormone levels. They think that there might be a link to hormone problems, including the development of acne, which is really scary because what a teenagers love to do is eat sugar. Insulin resistance over time.
Yeah. If you're
That can be
diabetic, yeah.
a problem.
Or,
Fatty liver disease. Some too much sugar can cause this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which unfortunately has the same impact as somebody who has alcoholic liver disease. And heart disease, it's
yeah.
definitely, and it also affects your immune system.
Well, I
So,
know as a heart patient that the big concern was inflammation. They
yes,
wanted me to
yes.
be on a low inflammatory diet,
Yeah,
and so that meant no simple carbs. And
yeah.
we didn't know much about inflammation and disease until a couple of years ago, really. So
Yeah, it's become more
talk
popular.
about inflammation and
Yeah.
simple carbs.
Yeah, eating
Tell
too
us.
much added sugar and other refined carbs is a link to inflammation in the body. And the body inflammation in the body can be either chronic um, or sustained. And basically, like when you injure yourself or you have an infection, your body inflames. But that's a temporary condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like that's just a response to an injury. But you don't want chronic inflammation.
Yeah.
It's different than acute inflammation. And so chronic inflammation can be caused by definitely by lifestyle, but by eating sugar. And it can increase your health problems such as heart disease, obesity, diabetes, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis. I mean, they're just tying it to so many things in the body.
Yeah, I mean, even things like asthma and chronic pain.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
and any type of immune disease. But um, I know people who walk around in chronic pain, and I see how
Hmm.
high their inflammatory diet is, and I sometimes think, gosh, I wish I could just put them on a low anti-inflammatory lifestyle and
Yeah.
see if their chronic pain goes away, which is really an issue in
Hmm.
aging people, and
Yeah.
and so
Yeah,
yeah.
staying off simple sugars, is very helpful in so many ways. It can help us assist with weight loss, and sugar has been shown to be addictive. Like when you eat sugar, especially in a time of stress, I know I would love to have a cookie if I get stressed out.
Mm.
That's it's my because sugar affects the dopamine in your brain. And if you know that, if your body gets used to that idea, sure enough, when you get stressed out, you're going to want sugar and it becomes a habit. And I'm I'm definitely guilty of that. I don't keep much sugar in my house because I'm the one who will eat it if it is in the
Well,
house.
I know you once told me a tip that you, of course, you're very aware of your daily intake and your caloric intake and such, that you just make sure that you have no more than 10% of your daily calories
Yeah.
in
Well,
simple sugar.
if you look at that, sugar has 4 calories per gram. All carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. So if you see that on a food label that something has 8 grams of sugar, so you take that times four, that means you're getting 32 calories of sugar. Okay.
Okay.
And if you look at, so you figure out approximately how many calories you're eating in a day. Like, say you eat 1,600 calories in a day, 10% of that is 160.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, you could have 160 calories from sugar in a day.
Yeah.
That's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
People are human and sometimes they need a treat. And I think that, watching out for added sugars is really helpful. Now, for instance, when you're looking at a food label, nowadays they also list not just the carbohydrates, but they list the added sugars, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is really helpful. Because if you're having a flavored yogurt, for instance, and it's got 18 grams of sugar, maybe only 12 of that is added sugar. Not, because there's natural sugars in milk, lactose, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Cottage cheese, for instance, has 3 grams of sugar, but zero of added sugar. They don't add sugar to cottage cheese. So
Okay.
all those grams of sugar are naturally occurring from the lactose in the milk. I think those are important things. So it's handy now. You can look at a label and see how much added sugar there is and how much total there
Yeah.
is.
So
Yeah.
you can see how complex this is, and if you
Mm-hmm.
if someone in the audience has, say, diabetes, of course, talk to your doctor, find a
Or your dietitian.
professional
Yeah.
so, like
Yeah.
Susy who can help, because you may need to really even count your carbs, and you may need to look at
Yeah.
something called glycemic index. Can you
Right.
explain to the audience what glycemic index is?
Yeah. Glycemic index is a measure of in a food that tells you how it affects your blood sugar. So foods that have a low glycemic index are going to help, they're going to make it so that your blood sugar doesn't rise as quickly, whereas foods with a high glycemic index can make your blood sugar rise more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually, there's charts in books that tell you what the glycemic index of particular foods is. For instance, low glycemic foods include fruits like apples, berries, oranges, lemons, limes, non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, tomatoes, whole grains, legumes. Whereas foods that have a high glycemic index include things like breads, rice, especially white rice, cereals, especially those breakfast cereals and instant oatmeal, starchy vegetables like potatoes and some squash, baked goods, of course, they've got lots of sugar in them, and snacks to our sugar sweetened beverage.
Yeah.
Those things are going to make your blood sugar rise more quickly. And as you get older, you should probably ask your doctor to make sure to test your A1C. I think they routinely do that in blood work
They do.
after the age of 60 or so.
Yes.
Because if you're in a range where your doctor says you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, obviously if you're diabetic, they're going to talk with you about that. But if you're pre-diabetic, it's really time to watch your sugar
Right.
and try to limit the amount of simple sugars that you eat on a
So
regular
a good
basis.
rule of thumb is that the fruits and vegetables are, for the most part, really good for you, and the ones that are the low glycemic index, you would
Mm-hmm.
say, are the good carbs.
Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah. And then also because, you want to keep things in balance, if you do have problems with your A1C and you're pre-diabetic, you need to focus on protein. Make sure you have protein at every meal, especially breakfast.
Hmm.
So start your day with protein and try to incorporate protein into each meal that you eat throughout the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, can be
So
really helpful.
when you say simple sugars, I just want to clarify, is it
Mm-hmm.
just is it just sugar, or like, let's say, is a glass of apple juice considered simple sugar? I mean, it's definitely
Uh,
going to
pro
be high.
Probably, I mean, okay, have you ever made apple juice? It takes a
Mm,
lot of apples to make a glass of apple
right,
juice. So
right.
that's a lot of carbohydrate. I think about the guidelines when you have a baby, for instance, the guidelines are pretty much like 4 ounces of juice a day. 4 ounces isn't very much because that's a lot of sugar. It takes a lot of fruit to make an 8-ounce glass of juice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think apple juice is a pretty good example. I think people have a tendency to think that some of these juices that kids drink are healthy to a limited extent, but it definitely can be overdone and way too many carbohydrates. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anything else you want to say about drinks that people might drink, and
Oh, well,
carbohydrates?
yeah, well, in terms of drinks, I think that sugary drinks are sort of habit forming. I'm not a big person who promotes artificial sweeteners either. I think they're just mimicking that whole thing and doesn't change the habit. And the jury's still out on the effect on your brain and other things from artificial sweeteners. So, again, I'm sort of in, if you want to drink water or drink, a mineral water with a little fruit in it, have a little iced tea with some lemon,
Yeah.
try to hydrate with other things. Yeah.
Well,
And especially with children, I think it's good to get them into the habit of drinking water,
so
period.
if we want to reduce simple carbohydrates, we wouldn't want to drink too much juice, or
No,
give our
no,
children too much juice.
no, we don't want to do that.
And
Yeah.
so, uh, anything you want to say about how to get more complex carbohydrates?
Well, I think meal planning is important way to look at that. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about the my plate recommendation, basically making half your plate, vegetables, and then a quarter protein and a quarter some kind of healthy complex carbohydrate, some kind of grain. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah,
That's
and I think people are kind of surprised sometimes when they start making sure that they get enough protein at a meal. It doesn't have to be a lot. Protein, if you're eating meat, protein can only be like 3 ounces, 2 ounces. It doesn't
yeah.
have to be a ton, but it can help you stay full. And then if you're complementing that with some good carbohydrates, you want to make sure that you're getting the complex carbohydrates, but you're going to feel more full.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So have you covered everything you want to tell us about food
Carbo.
labels? Because I mean, you and I pretty much make everything from scratch, but I know a lot of people who don't. And so, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you and I
Mm-hmm.
would prepare a meal from scratch and have the plate, one quarter protein, one quarter fresh veggies with a variety of colorful veggies and one quarter of some type of complex carbohydrate. But what about people who eat? I'm not going to name any brands. Uh, you know,
Processed food more.
yeah, like what we
Yeah.
used to call TV dinners when we were kids. But
Well,
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
in the world today, there are actually some healthy fast, takeout things, but it is much harder to get the nutrients that you need from eating, you know, processed
Prepared meals. That's the word.
prepared meals. Yes.
So when we read
Um,
the food label, yeah.
yeah. And, so when you're looking at it, try to keep in mind that you don't want to avoid protein. That everything should be in balance.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the percentages. I mean, without going into a complete food label, I can't really break it down. The
Okay.
other thing about prepared foods is the sodium. It's
Yeah.
like really high, and you really should limit your sodium to around 1,500 milligrams a day. So
Mm,
if you have a takeout food or a prepared food, and it's got 500 or 600 milligrams of sodium in one meal, well, you're probably going to be over for the day.
I see.
So it makes it much harder. The other thing that we could talk about briefly, there's a lot of confusion around is alcohol.
Yes.
Yeah,
Is alcohol a carbohydrate?
it's not really a carbohydrate. I used to be that people would say, well, your body processes it like a carbohydrate, but it
I mean, it's
really,
not fat or protein, so
it's not a fat, it's not a carbohydrate, it's alcohol.
it's so
It's
it's
alcohol.
not any macronutrient then.
It's
That's
not a
what
macronutrient.
no, not at all.
Yeah, but it does have some types of alcohol are full of carbohydrates, like
Yeah.
beer,
Yeah.
or if you drink a mixed drink with juice or Coke or anything in it,
Or wine.
wine. Wine's
Mhm.
got carbohydrates for sure. So
But liquor, straight liquor, no
straight liquor
carbohydrate.
like gin, vodka,
Even if
whiskey.
it's made from potatoes.
It's right. Yeah. And so
Why is that? Tell us.
because it's fermented, and then the product that you get is alcohol. So
Yeah.
the sugar, that's the beauty of fermentation. It changes sugar. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, so alcohol can actually make your blood sugar drop because when you metabolize alcohol, it first of all it takes precedent. So like if you're drinking, eating a meal and drinking alcohol, your body's going to detoxify the alcohol first, and it
Mm-hmm.
breaks it down into carbon dioxide and water. And it's hard on the liver, and that means when you drink alcohol, your liver has to process it first, and so then it doesn't do all the other important jobs that it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
Liver
I
has
mean,
like many, many, many jobs, over 50 different jobs that the liver is responsible for in the body. It's a big deal. And
the liver is so important.
and I
Didn't you
know that
once tell
people.
me it's the liver that turns food into energy for our cells?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah. So,
And
I
so if
personally
it's
watched somebody,
processing glucose and alcohol, oh,
I've watched somebody who is dear to me, their blood sugar drop when they've had too much alcohol. Yeah. And it's pretty scary. So, yeah. So the important thing is to eat food, enjoy it, nurture ourselves, figure out where you can get healthy food, but and like, monitor how many carbohydrates you eat, especially the simple ones.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there are challenges, and our sugar is so prevalent in our culture, and it's addicting.
It helps to kind of plan your meals. I mean, it does take
Yeah.
time. I mean, Susie and I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time shopping and cooking for our families and planning our meals so
Mm-hmm.
that we're not in a situation where like I'm starving. There's no
Yeah.
food in the
Yeah.
house. There's
Well, I
nothing
hear that all the time from
made
my grandkids.
and then we start
There's
chowing
nothing to eat
down.
because you only have healthy stuff in your house. The grandkids come here and say, "You don't have any food in your house." And I'm like, "Have some nuts, have some fruit." Oh, anyway, yeah.
Well, I mean, one thing I remember because the last time I had a baby was 45 years ago, and that baby is pretty darn health conscious now. He went through a little period where he wanted to go to the fast food restaurants,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Hey, my daughter used to
if
say,
you
"How
start
come we
him
never have potato chips? How
right,
come you
if
never buy pop?"
right, if you start them young and healthy, like they eventually they come
Yeah,
around,
yeah,
and so
yeah. I had the
good.
same experience. My daughter was a very good eater growing up. I mean, she would eat all kinds of
Mhm.
ethnic food and things like that. And now she eats really healthy, and she's
Yeah,
40. And
yeah,
but I really believe that children return to their food culture when they grow up. They slip out of it when they're adolescents.
yeah,
They
because
want to
they
eat with
want
their
to go
friends or
along with the
eat.
crowd. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
then they'll usually come back to their own food culture that they grew up with in their
Exactly,
first 5 years.
exactly what
Yeah.
my
So it's
experience.
super important to introduce your kids to healthy food when they're
Yeah.
little. Yeah.
So if any young parents out there, you can do
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Well, I think we've covered everything, Susie.
Yeah, I think
Anything
so.
else? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be talking in the future about other macronutrients, protein, and fat. But today we just covered carbohydrates. And thank you
Yes.
very much for listening.
Yeah. And so until next time, we are
You're staying
staying alive.
alive.
You've been listening to Staying Alive with Margaret and Susie. This show is hosted by Margaret Cooley and Susy Hymas. To subscribe to our show, leave a comment or ask a question, please visit stayingalivewithmargaretandsusie.com. Our podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. If you've enjoyed our program, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening.